with the macro out of the way, I'm actually going to jump into some of the ETS names, sir. What I have here, based on your feedback, is I pulled up at first just the cloud security names. Now, this isn't a perfect list, but it is the best way for us to identify and categorize some of these vendors. Clearly, the world's moving more and more towards cloud. Applications are moving more and more towards, container, and we can get into that in a little bit. But I think one of the reasons we're seeing such a huge proliferation of these names is the more legacy, mature security names were not born cloud native. We're not really there, and they're playing catch up through R&D and M&A to try to get there. But this is really creating an opportunity for these names. And what I pulled up here is the overall sentiment, which means your ability to evaluate and willingness to work with one of these vendors. And with the names we're seeing, which are super high, are probably not surprising to you, but Wiz, Aqua, Laceworks, Orca, these are names. Netscope and Illumio, we all know already. They've been around for a while, but I would love to maybe just get your thoughts. Wiz and Aqua are two that have continued to lead. To the extent that you're able to talk to us about it, your awareness of them, if you've ever done a POC, and your overall sentiment of these names would be super helpful, Michael.
Yeah, we have not adopted, I'll start there, these solutions, but actively looking at these solutions. This kind of speaks to my earlier comment, so many overlapping, and you look at those first two, Aqua and Wiz, excellent solutions, small companies, but certainly excellent solutions that have slightly different approaches to the securing the cloud. And that's that part of that confusion I was speaking about. It's not as straightforward. I mean, there's always, of course, every market segment has multiple solution approaches. So that in itself isn't unique. But that's, we've been talking with these folks across the board on your chart here, virtually everybody here, consistently over the last few years. And it's that hesitation of, well, what is the right approach? What is the right integrated approach? And even, do I need to integrate with my on-premise security capabilities? It's still trying to answer the right question. And so for me, that's what creates that hesitation. I've seen great solutions, or the great products from Aqua, from Wiz. Aqua, we worked with a little bit more. I wouldn't call it a formal POC, but we did some trial, I guess. We do have a formal POC process, so we haven't approached that level yet. Illumio as well, we've taken deep dives into. Laceworks, a deep dive into. So just everybody the above. We have, for us, because of our size and who we are, we do work more with our partners, meaning companies we already have technology in place. So you look at like a Palo Alto and VMware, direct with AWS and Microsoft. But I'll just sum up my comment. We're looking at everybody to find the right approach. And it does constrain our cloud adoption. I don't want to get too far ahead or get off base here, but not having the right solutions in place does make us take a conservative adoption approach to just cloud in general.
Interesting that you brought up that, you obviously need to continue to work with your existing partners. And one of the cool things that we can do here as a data company is we can cross-reference you and your colleagues and your spending with Palo Alto. And I also put up Cisco here in security as well, because they're the two, big platform players that are most acquisitive. And then we can cross-reference it with these names that we were talking about to see where there's the most overlap. And we call it either the potential target or a potential disruptor, largely because, you're citing both. And probably not surprising to you, but the names that you're seeing up here are Aqua, are Sneak in app security and container security. We are seeing OneTrust and, and Beyond Trust on privacy and identity access. A lot of the names that you were kind of talking about here do seem to have a very high overlap. So kind of the context that you brought that, hey, we're going to work with our existing partners to make sure there's an integration strategy. As we look at this chart and see the overlap, are there any that you feel might have a lead that, might say, hey, they can jump from this emerging type of, standing, but also really get into a large organization like mine? Any of these stand or jump out at you that have a bright future ahead?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, certainly you look at container security, API, container more so I'll start there. So Aqua would definitely, I would call out to your comment. I think they've got a good, well-rounded solution around security. Containers is, including my own organization, a growing trend, and from my perspective, a solid adoption for especially my type of organization. A bit of context, we're highly decentralized, which is common in my industry. So the concept of containers, APIs to a certain extent, but definitely containers. So solutions that focus on container-based security, validating security, monitoring, and providing equitable security oversight and control as we have on premise to these containers and the cloud infrastructure. And Aqua, from what I've seen, definitely squarely fits in that definition. So back to your comment about who can jump furthest, they, to me, stand out. SNCC is interesting in your chart here. Certainly as a longstanding AppSec, and as the royal we in security or IT look to continue to mature DevSecOps practices, they're certainly a leader there. So they have an opportunity because they have a good foundational type of approach around just basic application coding security. So I think that gives them that foundational growth to expand their case there. So it's interesting, but it is interesting that they're so high up on your chart there.
Yeah, I'm showing a few different right here. If we just went to application security, they are #1 without a doubt. And that definitely is the area, as you know, you see that great shift left to security. They're really well positioned. And then if we go just to container security, it's still them and Aqua #1 and 2. So, you know, very interesting. Both of these names seem to be extremely well positioned amongst you and your peers. You also mentioned the importance of API security. And I think a lot of people don't quite get it yet. They say, well, I have application security, so therefore I have API security. And it's not exactly true, is it?
Certainly, I mean, application security as a whole is interesting. We've had application security tools as long as we've had just straight vulnerability tools. And so this is not a new or newer segment, but what is new, exactly the concept you just described, shifting to the left, that we like to term that we like to use, but just DevOps and now DevSecOps practices, that's where the growing maturity is. So where vulnerability management has definitely become commoditized as a whole,
Right.
Now the greater focus of companies who are not just where software is their product, is their business. So if you're doing any little bit of programming or customization of off the shelf, now we're realizing particularly and definitely the key driver is the focus around supply chain risks. That's really driving all of us who do even the most minor application development to adopt a solution. So that's where I see the trend. That's why that trend is picking up. And then back to your point, then you branch off into subsegments like API security and matching that with deployment to cloud containers and ensuring that security from end to end is immutable and you're monitoring it is absolutely critical. And that's where these tool sets come into play.